Hi, I'm Linda, and I want to welcome you to Randolph County, home of the Allred family since 1755. This video is to show you some of the Allred sites in Randolph County. Randolph County is part of the Uwharrie mountain chain. Of course, as you can see from this video, our mountains really are just large rolling hills. Nothing like what you'd see in the Rockies. We begin at Grace Chapel United Methodist Church. We consider this the home church of the Allred family because it's one of the oldest churches in Randolph County. It's also the site where the oldest known Allred graves are. The church building you're seeing is actually the third building. The first was outgrown. They built a second one on the same site. The second one burnt down, so they built the third. The third is actually inside this building. They've bricked over it and added Sunday school rooms. The church was established in 1834. As you can see, it is a very large cemetery. As I pan around the cemetery, you should notice that there are a lot of Allred graves. At least 1/3 of these graves are Allred by name. Most likely the rest are related to the Allred family by marriage. These are the oldest known Allred graves in Randolph County. A close-up view shows you William Allred Sr. His son John Allred, and the gravestones of William and Patience Allred. Now you'll notice the newer stone and the older ones on either side. As you can see from a close-up view of Patience Julian Allred's stone and her husband William Allred, the information on these stones is slowly being lost to time. Soapstone was a very popular stone in the 1800s, easily carved and used for many things. Unfortunately, true to its name, it melts away in the water, just like soap. Every time it rains, a little bit more information is lost. Because of this, we should each feel a real urgency to begin recording what's on all these tombstones here in Randolph County and across the United States. You'll see a lot of cattle farms in Randolph County. Another view of our rolling hills. This is a farm near the Shiloh United Methodist Church, which is our next stop. Shiloh United Methodist Church is where my great-great-great-grandfather Jesse Allred is buried. Jesse was born in 1783, died in 1844. He was illegitimate. He told his children and grandchildren he was found on a stump out in the woods. Does he look familiar to anybody? If so, if you think you know who he was, please let me know. I'm standing in the oldest section of the cemetery. As you can see, a lot of the stones are very worn. Some are now no more than just a regular rock. Here's some wonderful examples of soapstone. I can't read what's written on there, can you? It's slowly melting away. Some are now no more than just rocks. There's no way of knowing who's buried here. Again, we see my Jesse. But who's buried beside of him? His wife? A child? We'll never know. There's nothing left of Jesse's house except for that old clump of trees off in the distance. You can see he lived near a creek. You can see the little bridge that crosses the road at the creek there. And the Peter Freeman house, which is being restored. This is the Jesse Allred Jr. house at Red Cross. The back side of this house was built in 1818. Jesse bought it in 1853. And in the 1890s added the front part of the house. Now we're inside the oldest section of the house. As you can see, Dot's standing beside of the chimney, the fireplace. She's 5'3", so we're estimating the fireplace opening was at least 5 foot tall.
Other than that old.
You can see some of the old logs there on that wall.
That old couch supposed to be in here, all the rest of this stuff.
This room right here was added on when Jesse Jr.'s son was married. He and his wife lived in here, and as you can see, it looks into the oldest section of the house. Wave, Dot. Say hi. Hi. This is the loft upstairs where the children would have slept. You can see where the old logs are exposed. Now, as I said earlier, the front section of the house was built in the 1890s. Coming in through the front door, you face the staircase. To the right of the staircase was the parlor, or what we would call a living room today. Down the hall a little ways to the left is the bedroom. And as you can see a little further down the hall, you go right out the back door to the oldest section of the house. Coming up the stairs to the left, you'll find one of the two upstairs bedrooms. Hi, Dot.
Hey. And there was no closets built in this part. And my mother and dad took lumber that was left over and made this, they called it a wardrobe.
So come home.
Across the hall is the other bedroom, which looks pretty much identical.
It has a fireplace.
This room has the added feature of a little balcony. Which overlooks the staircase and downstairs. So this house is very typical of the older houses you'll find in this county and in central North Carolina. Did you notice what was missing? There's no kitchen. The back part of the house, the original log part, was used as the kitchen. They did have a stove, but generally meals were cooked in the fireplace. Each room was about 20 foot by 20 foot, one on top of the other. No closets, no bathrooms. Wave. Wave, Hubert. He's being shy. This is his great-great-grandfather's property. Now his property. His sister Dot. Just wanted to give you a good look of the property. The old car house, we would call them a garage now. And down in the bottoms where the spring house used to be, or what we would call a refrigerator. Springtime in Randolph County. You're looking at the mouth of Sandy Creek, where it leaves Deep River. Per the land grants, this was where the original Solomon Allred's land was. The original William Allred land grant reads, on Bush Creek of Deep River. This land is now owned by E.C. Callicut and his daughter Robin Bryant. When you're standing in Franklinville Cemetery, where you find the grave of John Allred, son of William and Patience, and his wife Mary, or her nickname was Polly, and their daughter Martha, you'll find lots of other Allred graves as you look over the cemetery towards Deep River. You're looking at the back side of the original William Allred land. Patterson Grove Church, where you'll find the grave of Jonathan Allred, grandson of the original John, Joseph Allred, and a few we can barely read. You can look over the cemetery and see the land off in the distance, which was the original John Allred land. The land grant dated March 15, 1755 reads, for John Allred, 640 acres on the east side of Deep River, on the mouth of Mount Pleasant Run of Sandy Run, includes his and Thomas Allred's improvements. You're looking at the mouth of Mount Pleasant as it runs into Sandy Creek. It's a very peaceful view of the original John Allred and Thomas Allred land. There are some very interesting sights to see in Randolph County, including Randolph Church. Local folklore tells us that Cornwall camped his troops here for a fortnight during the Revolutionary War. Randolph County is the home of Sandy Creek Baptist Church, said to be the mother of all Southern Baptist churches. Reverend Shubal Stearns, who founded Sandy Creek in 1755, was born in Boston, Massachusetts in 1706. He's buried in the church cemetery. As the historical marker at Cedar Falls says, the cotton mill at Cedar Falls produced more cotton cloth for the Confederacy than any other cotton mill in North Carolina. Standing on the bridge at Cedar Falls, this is a view of Deep River. You can see the large rocks in the distance. At one time, the water was deep enough to cascade over those rocks, creating the falls that the town is named after. Cedar Falls Methodist and Cedar Falls Baptist Church now share the same cemetery. There are many Allred graves here, and two of my favorite show the problems we have with spelling. Notice Henry Aldridge's tombstone. Pay special attention to how he spelled his name. Now look at his wife's tombstone. Spelled it differently, didn't she? Even the H and the C are reversed. Complications like that make it very hard for us trying to figure everything out. At the top of the hill, directly across the street from Cedar Falls Baptist Church, is the original building with the old cemetery beside of it. The oldest graves here is that of Henry Branson Allred, who was born in 1825, died in 1901. He was the great-grandson of the original William. The Cedar Falls Historical Society now owns the church building and grounds and are slowly restoring them. As you can see from the back side of the cemetery, there's a lot of work to be done. You can see several of the tombstones will need to be repaired. The Allreds get together each year during late fall and spend a few days going to various graveyards around Randolph County to repair tombstones. These are part of the activities we do each year during our Week of Allred. At Giles Chapel Methodist Church, you'll see the broken tombstone of Elijah Allred, who is the great-grandson of the original Thomas. As you can see from this row of graves, all Thomas's children, there's a lot of work to be done repairing tombstones. Giles Chapel is one of the larger cemeteries in Randolph County. When Sue and I first saw the Moffett family cemetery, where her ancestor Elisha Allred and his family are buried, it looked more like this. We were standing about 3 feet away from one of the tombstones. We could tell there was a tombstone there, but we couldn't get to it because of all the brush. During our very first week of Allred in 1998, several of us came out here and worked on clearing off this cemetery so we could find the tombstones and see who was buried here. By then, someone else had cut off the larger brush and trees, but we still had a lot of work to do. Talk real loud.
Many of these tombstones were broken, and we took epoxy glue and glued them back to their base, and this is what we found here. The shape that we found them in was pretty rough. Hopefully we can, as a group, get a lot of these cemeteries restored.
In this cemetery, we found the graves of Elisha Allred, who was born in 1803 and died in 1865. His wife, Barbara Spoon Allred. Barbara was born in 1806 and died in 1869. And their 3 children, Eliza Jane, who died in 1861, Anson, who died in 1863, and James, who died in 1865. All of these deaths were related to the Civil War, or more commonly known as the War Between the States.
Knowledge during the Civil War that many people starved to death in the South, and they were so weak and emaciated they couldn't resist diseases or anything. They say that's a result of a lot of these deaths.
One of the prettiest pieces of property in Randolph County is the old Burton Allred home place, where many of the Allred family reunions were held back in the 1920s and 1930s. The date carved on the chimney tells us the house was built August 13th, 1829. One of the unique features of this house was a guest room. Located just off the inside porch, the 10-foot by 10-foot room was left unlocked at all times so that guests coming down the road needing a place to spend the night could just come on in without disturbing the family. The barn, built in the late 1800s or early 1900s, has several writings on the wall. Just inside the barn is an old grain bin. Family members have recorded family stories over the years, such as the story of H.R. Allred, who moved from the Burton place June 22, 1940, and forgot to move his calf. Or this notation about Tom Burke and Roy Chandler, who brought their son Billy's pony on July 4th, 1942, and everyone had lots of fun. L. Allred enlisted in the U.S. Army on June 29, 1940. 6 pigs were born on January 21st, 1955. Someone bought a mule from J.A. Brady on October 29th, 1940. On March 13th, 1940, they had sleet. On March 24th, 1940, they had 4 inches of snow, and it was Easter Sunday. Tom Burke recorded that there was a mule named Rhoda who was 18 hours old and weighed 83 pounds. On July 3rd, 1943, it had been raining for a week and it was still raining. Hammond Allred, aged 3 years, got lost March 1st, 1940, and was lost for 4 hours before he was found 1.5 miles from home on the creek near a stream. The writings on this old grain bin are a wonderful diary giving us a peek into the life of the family during that time period. Looking west from the barn out across the pasture, you notice the hill on the distance. That's where one of the old Allred gold mines is located. We know Milton Allred owned this gold mine in the late 1800s, but there was another gold mine closer to Cedar Falls owned by Joseph Allred back in the 1840s. At Millboro in northern Randolph County, you'll see this old store, owned in the 1870s, 80s, and 90s by Bethel Allred, my great-great-uncle. Lived across the street from the store in this old house, very similar to the Jesse Jr. house that you saw earlier in the video. Bethel's store was the gathering place of the community. From stories I've heard, Bethel had quite a personality and everybody loved to gather around him to listen to his jokes. When you come to Randolph County, be sure to let me know you're in town and I'll come by and tell you some of Bethel's jokes. He was a funny one. At Pleasant Cross Christian Church, you'll find the grave of Milton Allred and his wife Frances and 5 of their children. All were born and died between 1890 and 1898. On the back of each tombstone is a little saying. This one says, "Oh, such is the kingdom of heaven, a little bud of love to bloom with God above, budded on earth to bloom in heaven, gone to be an angel, and only sleeping." In the 1890s, there were several epidemics, including diphtheria and influenza, that most likely wiped out this family. One of the older graves here is that of Clemens Allred, grandson of the original Solomon, and his wife Sylvania Coode Allred. When you come to Randolph County, be sure to ask me to tell you Clemens' story. It's a story of love for his wife and her sister, a story of intrigue, attempted murder, a little moonshine, and a lot of mystery. A great story. We end our springtime visit to Randolph County with a sight of this beautiful dogwood tree with a visit to the Randolph Room, Randolph County's genealogy and historical library, located on the bottom floor of the public library in Asheboro. Materials you'll find in the Randolph Room include books, maps, vertical files, pamphlets, CDs, microfilm, census records, and photographs. Along one wall is a file full of family information, including 5 files full of information on the Allred family. There are bookshelves full of family history books, including The Allred Family in America, Volume 1, written by Dr. Rulon C. Allred, and the family history book I wrote, titled The Allred Family of Randolph County, includes the Lineberry family, Clark, and Henderson families. In addition to the library is the book titled John Dirk Allred and Frances Caroline Neighbors, Family Records. You'll find heritage books from many of the counties of North Carolina and records on Confederate veterans, genealogy journals and magazines, a large variety of maps, both old and new, Barbara Griggs collection. It also has a couple of files of Allred information. No visit to Randolph County can be complete without a visit to the Randolph Room, where you'll find so many research materials. Helpful librarians such as May Allman will be glad to answer questions and point you in the right direction. If you enjoyed your video trip to Randolph County, y'all come see us sometime.
Okay, we will.
went down there and bought 2 bulls, $1,200 a piece. That was sort of paying for it.